As is the case with most high schools, the one through which I matriculated still clung rigidly to the idea that every single student needs to take a speech class, regardless of whether we ever plan to speak at any point during the rest of our lives or not. They didn't care. One semester during everyone's sophomore year, respectively, we were all forced into this small side classroom where we were made to stand in front of a room of our peers and try to orate like a fucking boss. Needless to say, some of us were better at it than others. You know who those kids are. The ones who seem effortlessly charismatic and can entertain easily a single person or a room full of people indiscriminately. You know, the kids who grow up to be John Wayne Communale. I was not one of those kids. To me, speech class was utter torture. I didn't want to give speeches. I didn't even want to talk to people in my personal life. And now you're making me do it for a fucking grade? Fuck you! You can't make me! Except it turns out they could. And did. Unlike college, high school does not afford its students the luxury of being able to drop classes at which we are complete and utter shit. Instead, if you show up, as I did, at the office and ask to be removed from this archaic and unnecessary form of forced public humiliation in favor of being allowed to sit quietly in the library and read by yourself for an hour, or maybe just go hide in a cabinet or something, the portly woman who acts as the administrative gatekeeper for an administration that is really only two other people will laugh down at you and say, "Honey, you don't get to decide what you do." Older, smarter people who know what's best decide that for you. Now get your ass back to class or you'll be back here for Saturday school. Ironically enough, this smarter people who know what's best for you will make your decisions mentality has permeated nearly every aspect of my life growing up, although it's dressed up in different boxes with more neatly tied bows. I stomped back down the hall towards my speech class, contemplating setting fire to our school's full-scale medieval suit of armor that served as our mascot. That didn't seem right, though. He hadn't done anything wrong. He just stood there by the door, reminding people that we went to a school that chose to spend its money buying giant suits of authentic armor, instead of offering more art classes for kids like me who didn't give a fuck about the fact that our football stadium school board was now 4 times bigger and could be seen from the highway. Or that they could have, paid their teachers with that money. Yeah, teachers! Easy applause. Instead, I settled for making masturbatory gestures at every security camera I passed on my way down the hall. As I slunk back into the room, I was just in time to catch the end of my friend Tyler's opinion speech. In an opinion speech, you're meant to take a stance on some point and then try and express that opinion to the rest of the audience, hopefully leaving them all nodding sagely and going, uh-huh, uh-huh, wise, wise. I never thought about it that way. Brilliant, I say, brilliant. As I slumped down into my chair at the back of the class, brooding over not being allowed to decide the course of my education, Tyler concluded his speech about how our teacher, Miss Sterling, and a Siberian tiger were essentially the same thing, to a deafening round of laughter and applause. Tyler was one of those kids I was talking about before. He could have given a speech about the best ways to masturbate on a roller coaster, and people would have called it fantastically sardonic and so clever for his age. As the applause died down, Miss Sterling took the podium at the front of the class while Tyler proudly strolled back to his seat next to me. "So how'd it go?" he asked me, turning in his chair and completely ignoring the rest of the room. I rolled my eyes and shook my head in response, lest I get myself worked up and launch into a rage-fueled diatribe. Those, I had learned, were not the sort of speeches they wanted from you in speech class. "Told you, man," Tyler said, doodling a picture of the Pope as a wizard on his desk and not giving 2 fucks about anything. "You're stuck here like the rest of us." "Still bullshit," I said. "Did you set Nighty on fire?" he asked. Nighty was the name of the suit of armor that I had passed in the hallway. The faculty had spent 2 entire weeks attempting to name him, and, in a manner which perfectly summed up everything about our school, they named it Nighty. Which was stupid. Because his name should very obviously have been Bramford. No, I said, no fires today. But I did jerk off on all the security cameras on the way back. Better than nothing, I guess, Tyler said. He spun back around in his seat to catch the tail end of the new speech assignment Sterling was giving the class. Must be based on research this time, she was saying. I tried to make myself pay attention. It was incredibly difficult. For a speech teacher, Miss Sterling had one of the most painful voices to listen to. She sounded like Siri if Siri were 70 years old, and had a real taste for animal tranquilizers. And menthols. Up until now, she was rasping out in her gravelly, monotone drone, your speeches have been about either opinions or personal events from your life. Now that you've begun to master the basics, it's time to get into what speech giving is really about. Getting information. And then telling that information to other people. And you will be required to cite sources. What fresh fuckery was this? The only way I had been squeaking by in this class was due to the fact that I could essentially get up and mumble on about something or other, and so long as I met the time constraint and managed not to curse loud enough for anyone to hear, I could at least manage a passing grade. Now I had to have actual, factual facts to back up the claims I was making. Tomorrow, Sterling continued, we will all meet in the library so you can do your research. Speeches will begin on Thursday. Fuck! The following day, the answer to my source-citing problem dropped into my lap like a gift from the universe. As my speech class compatriots and I disseminated ourselves amongst the computer terminals in the school's library, Miss Sterling and Mrs. Yates, the librarian, although she really flipped her lid if you didn't call her an information specialist, began the class by introducing us to the wonders of the then burgeoning website Wikipedia. This, we were told, would be the primary source of information gathering for our upcoming speeches, as it did us all the favor of compiling information from several different sources into a singular express encyclopedia. What Miss Sterling and most educators at that time failed to notice was that Wikipedia subsidized its information base by allowing users to create or augment the information on its pages. But I noticed. With newfound inspiration and fervor, I set to work like a fiend, preparing for what I was sure would be the greatest moment of my academic career. Thursday arrived with the same pomp and circumstance that always heralded its coming. A shipment of new DVDs arrived at the local video store. The cafeteria served Wednesday's leftover hamburgers at Salisbury steak. Becky Robbins gave discount handjobs in the parking lot for cigarette money or loose joints. And I strode confidently to the head of the class to give what was going to be the most badass and factually supported speech this school had ever seen. I waited, dramatically staring out over the curious faces of my classmates and the aggressively skeptical face of Miss Sterling. I cleared my voice. I could feel the warmth and confidence of the 3 shots of vodka I had just taken in the bathroom beginning to well up from my insides, and I knew it was time to crush this shit. I breathed in, I breathed out, and then I began. Walmart is nothing more than a front for the Russian mafia to launder drug money and traffic sex workers out of the loading bays. The red threat is alive and well in America, and its pushers and pimps wear blue vests and smiley face buttons that say, "How may I help you?" As I continued my speech, making wild accusations as if I were stating actual facts, I could hear Sterling in the back of the room click-clacking away at her keyboard, pulling up the sources I had been forced to include on my works cited page. I continued to rain down a diatribe of complete and utter bullshit from the podium, watching her frantically key up web address after web address. My mouth went on autopilot, spewing more and more ridiculous garbage, as I watched the look on Sterling's face grow more and more confused. For now, before a moderator or someone had a chance to come along and verify the information I'd spent most of the evening fucking with, Wikipedia proudly proclaimed that Walmart and Sam's Club, because they're owned by the same family, was a well-known but as of yet unproven front for the mob. I'm just asking questions. I had even gone so far as to link Walmart's page to pages about international drug importation, the history of organized crime, and the Walton family who owns Walmart. Walton. Sterling turned back to stare at me in utter disconclusion, where I warned that if we were not vigilant, the Yakuza themselves would be running Costco before we knew it. I returned to my seat, awash in the glow of my triumph as my classmates applauded for the first time at one of my speeches. A meaningless, minuscule victory. But when victories are few and far between, you take what you can get. In that moment, I was a motherfucking champion of the people. I got a B-.